September 8th, 1900, Galveston, Texas, America's richest city per capita, the New York of the Gulf. By morning, it would be gone. 8,000 people dead, 12,000 homeless, bodies burning on the beach, and one man who ignored every warning. This is the story they tried to forget. The deadliest natural disaster in American history. Welcome back to the Iman. For a day after. Today, we're uncovering the Great Galveston Hurricane of 1900. A storm so catastrophic, it was erased from textbooks. A city so arrogant, it ignored Cuban meteorologists who warned them, and a cover-up so effective, most Americans don't even know it happened. This isn't fiction. This is documented history from the National Weather Service archives, the Library of Congress, and survivor testimonies. Some scenes have been recreated with AI where original photography was unavailable, but every fact, every quote, every number is verified. Let's go back to September 1900. Before we talk about the storm, you need to understand what Galveston was. Imagine the wealthiest city in Texas. Electric lights, telephone lines, opera houses, mansions that rivaled New York's Fifth Avenue. The port handled more cotton than any other city in America. Banking, shipping, culture. Galveston wasn't just rich. It was the jewel of the Gulf Coast. Population, 37,000. But here's the problem. The entire island sat barely 9 feet above sea level. The highest point, 9 feet. And it was a barrier island, 27 miles long, 3 miles wide. Nothing between it and the Gulf of Mexico. No seawall, no protection, nothing. But Galvestonians didn't care. They believed they were invincible. In 1891, the city's leaders were asked about hurricane protection. Their response? Galveston has never been seriously threatened by a hurricane. Pride before the fall. Meanwhile, Cuban meteorologists had been tracking storms for decades. They had the best hurricane prediction system in the world. And in early September 1900, they detected something terrifying. A massive storm crossing the Caribbean, heading north, toward the Gulf. The Cubans sent warnings to the U.S. Weather Bureau. Major hurricane approaching. Extreme danger. But the head of the U.S. Weather Bureau, Willis Moore, had a problem. He hated the Cubans, hated that they were better at forecasting than Americans. So he ordered his staff to ignore Cuban warnings. He even forbade American meteorologists from using the word hurricane in public statements. Too alarming, he said. Bad for business. Instead, the Weather Bureau called it a tropical disturbance. In Galveston, the local Weather Bureau chief was a man named Isaac Cline, 40-year-old, confident, respected, and absolutely convinced that Galveston was safe. In 1891, Cline had written an article titled, "An Absurd Delusion About Hurricanes." His argument? The idea that Galveston needed a seawall was ridiculous. He wrote, "It would be impossible for any cyclone to create a storm wave that could seriously damage the city." He was wrong, catastrophically wrong. September 7th, 1900, Friday evening. The sky over Galveston turned strange. The barometer began falling. The tide rose higher than normal. But there was no official warning, no evacuation order, because Isaac Cline still didn't believe the danger was real. That night, some residents noticed the Gulf acting strangely. The waves were higher, the wind picking up. But Galveston had weathered storms before. People went to bed. They had no idea what was coming. September 8th, 1900, Saturday morning. Isaac Cline woke early. The barometer had dropped to 28.48 inches, dangerously low. He walked to the beach. The surf was massive, angry. The tide was rising fast, and it was still morning. For the first time, Cline felt fear. He hitched up his horse and buggy and rode through the streets, knocking on doors, warning people to move inland. But there was no official evacuation order. No telegraph sent to Washington. No mass alarm. Just one man, too late, trying to undo his own arrogance. By noon, the rain began, heavy, relentless. The wind picked up, 40 miles per hour, 50, 60. The tide kept rising. By 3 p.m., water was flooding the streets. Not rain, seawater. The Gulf of Mexico was pushing inland. Families climbed to second floors, then attics, then roofs. The wind screamed at over 100 miles per hour. Wooden houses began to disintegrate. Roofs peeled off like paper. Walls collapsed, and the water kept rising. 4 feet, 6 feet, 8 feet. Entire city blocks vanished under the surge. The Galveston orphanage sat near the beach. 93 children, 10 nuns. The Mother Superior tied the children together with clothesline so they wouldn't be separated in the storm. When the orphanage collapsed, all 93 children drowned, still tied together. Their bodies washed ashore days later, in one long, heartbreaking line. Isaac Cline's own house was destroyed. His pregnant wife, Cora, was swept away and killed. He survived. Barely. Clinging to debris with his 3 daughters. The man who said a hurricane could never seriously damage Galveston watched his city die. By 8 p.m., the storm surge peaked at 15 feet. 15 feet of ocean water covering the island. In the darkness, people screamed for help. But no one could help. There was nowhere to go. St. Mary's Cathedral, the strongest building in the city, became a refuge. Over 1,000 people packed inside. The building held. But outside, the dead floated past in the floodwaters. The Tremont Hotel, the Garten Verein, mansions, shops, all obliterated. Survivor William Brantley later wrote, "I saw a woman holding a baby swept past me. I reached for her. Missed I. She vanished into the darkness. I never saw her again." Another survivor, Louise Hopkins. "The houses were crashing like dominoes. People were screaming. I saw a man clinging to a telephone pole. A wave took him. Just took him." The storm raged all night. Wind, rain, waves. Galveston was being erased. By sunrise on September 9th, the wind had died. The water receded. And the survivors emerged to find hell on earth. September 9th, 1900, Sunday morning. The sun rose over Galveston. What remained of it? 3,600 buildings destroyed. Over half the city, gone. And the bodies. Thousands of bodies. Everywhere. Floating in the wreckage. Trapped under debris. Piled on the beach. The official death toll was listed as 8,000. But many historians believe it was closer to 12,000. No one knows the exact number. Because entire families were wiped out. No one left to report them missing. The bodies presented an immediate crisis. In the Texas heat, they would decompose in days. Disease would spread. The survivors had to act fast. At first, they tried burial at sea. They loaded bodies onto barges, took them 3 miles offshore, weighted them down, dropped them in the Gulf. But the Gulf brought them back. The tides washed the bodies back to shore. Dozens, then hundreds, bloated, unrecognizable. It was unbearable. So the city made a terrible decision. They would burn the dead. On the beach, in the streets, wherever they lay. Funeral pyres. For weeks, the smoke hung over Galveston. The smell was indescribable. Survivors wore masks soaked in camphor, but nothing could block it out. Clara Barton, founder of the American Red Cross, arrived on September 17th. She was 78 years old. She had seen Civil War battlefields, but she said Galveston was worse. "I have seen nothing like this," she wrote. "The city is a graveyard." Martial law was declared. Soldiers patrolled the streets. Looters were shot on sight. Some were. Men caught stealing from corpses were executed without trial. The city was in chaos. Communication with the mainland was cut. The bridges were destroyed. The telegraph lines were down. For 3 days, the outside world didn't know what had happened. When news finally broke, the headlines were apocalyptic. Galveston destroyed. Thousands dead. America's worst disaster. But even in the horror, the cover-up began. Isaac Cline, the man who had dismissed hurricane warnings, immediately started rewriting history. In his official report to the Weather Bureau, he claimed he had warned everyone. He said he rode through the streets early, telling people to evacuate. Technically true, but he left out the part where he had spent years saying Galveston was safe. He left out the part where he ignored Cuban warnings. He left out the part where he opposed building a seawall. Cline became a hero in the press, the man who saved thousands. Meanwhile, the Weather Bureau buried the criticism. Willis Moore, the bureau chief who had banned the use of the word hurricane, faced no consequences. The Cubans, who had been right all along, were ignored. And the people of Galveston were left to rebuild. But the city would never be the same. In the months after the storm, Galveston faced a choice: rebuild or abandon. Many wanted to leave. The trauma was too much, but the city's leaders refused to give up. They launched one of the most ambitious engineering projects in American history. They would raise the entire city, 17 feet. Every building, every street, every home. They pumped sand from the Gulf floor and filled in the island. 16 million cubic yards of sand. Houses were lifted on jacks. Some were moved entirely. It took 7 years, and it cost millions. But they did it. And they built a seawall, 3 miles long, 17 feet high. The seawall that Isaac Cline said was unnecessary. The seawall that could have saved 8,000 lives. It still stands today. But here's what they didn't fix: the truth. For decades, the Galveston hurricane was barely mentioned in American history books. It was too embarrassing. Too many mistakes. Too much arrogance. The Weather Bureau didn't want to admit they ignored warnings. Isaac Cline didn't want to admit he was wrong. And Galveston didn't want to be remembered as the city that died. So the story faded, overshadowed by the San Francisco earthquake of 1906, forgotten in favor of more modern disasters. But the consequences were real. After 1900, Houston overtook Galveston as Texas's major port. The railroad bypassed Galveston. The city never regained its status as the New York of the Gulf, and 8,000 people never got justice. Most weren't even named in the records. Just numbers, just bodies, just forgotten. Today, if you visit Galveston, you'll see the seawall. You'll see the restored historic district. You'll see tourists on the beach. But you won't see much about 1900. There's a small museum, a few memorials. But for the deadliest natural disaster in American history, it's remarkably quiet. Because Galveston, like Tampa in 1921, learned a hard lesson. Disasters are bad for business, and the truth is bad for pride. So they buried both. But we won't. 8,000 people died in one night. Because of arrogance, because of ignored warnings, because of a system that valued reputation over lives. Isaac Cline lived until 1955. He never publicly apologized. He wrote a memoir where he painted himself as a hero. The Weather Bureau promoted him. He retired with honors. And the people of Galveston, they rebuilt. They survived. But they never forgot, even if the rest of America did. This is the story they tried to bury. The storm that destroyed America's richest city. The night 8,000 people vanished. The disaster that should have changed everything, but didn't, because we forgot. Don't let it happen again. If this story shocked you, hit that like button. Subscribe for more hidden history, and share this video. because the dead deserve to be remembered. All 8,000 of them. See you in the next one.